Oh, I'm just milking the sea snake.
Eavesdroppin.
Hello, Michelle.
Hi, Geordie.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. I'm good.
It's always great. Have you got another adjective?
No, I don't. Because I don't want to just say, oh, I'm drunk. I'm not, but I have had...
Well, that would be more honest, wouldn't it?
Did
I'm
just
drunk.
have two strawberry daiquiris, strong.
Okay.
Look, duty-free booze, you get the litre. You don't get 750 mils, you get a litre.
I was going to say, who's Judy Free?
Well, she's the cousin of Jeff Lee Jones.
Oh, dear, we've gone wrong already. Let's just introduce ourselves. Michelle, you're Michelle.
And you're Geordie. And you, dear listeners, are eavesdroppers, and you are listening to Eavesdroppin, the comedy podcast. We take the piss of sad things, bad things, true crime, and ourselves.
Laughing not at them, but with them. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't know.
Something like that.
Let's just stick with that because we don't want to get cancelled.
No cancelling for us, please. Come on, continue listening, continue writing in. You love to write in, you lot, don't you? Oh, we love to receive what you're giving.
We do indeed.
And what have they given this week, Michelle? I've had a couple of social media replies. I run the social media account, just so you know. I've had a couple of things on there. I think we've had a bit of Shari. We've had a bit of Safka. We've had some emails, which I can't respond to, but it's hello@eavesdroppinpodcast.com in case you would like to. I can read them, and I do read them.
I know. I actually feel like you are better on all of it because I read them and then forget to reply. I'm quite shit with that. So apologies. I do read everything eventually.
It might seem like she doesn't care.
Don't say that. I'm not a bitch. But I will say, yes, we did have an email drop in from the one and only lovely White Witch Safka, and she gave us a telерec because you know we love a telерec.
She's no longer a White Witch. She's now a television recommendations expert, I would say.
I think she's all things to all people.
She could be both.
She can be more than one thing. Well, she recommended Baby Reindeer.
Yes.
Have you seen it, Geordie?
No, I haven't. But anything she recommends, I will definitely give it a bash. And I haven't had a chance even to start Ripley, and I said I would, and I haven't done that yet.
Right.
But she also did say to me, Baby Reindeer was worth watching. She mentioned something about how brave the person was. So I have no idea about it. What's the premise?
Is it actually in the UK? Because as you know, I'm in Australia and Safka's in Australia. It's a British series and it's about a stalker who stalks this guy, and then it takes some very dark twists. It's based on his own personal experience. The writer of this series is actually the lead actor as well.
Yeah.
It is quite fucked up. I'll just say that. Safka says, Shari and I absolutely loved it. It was incredibly disturbing and powerful. I would agree with that. It was disturbing. It was powerful. But guys, eavesdroppers, if you're looking for a light little laugh...
That's not the one.
No, it's not. It's not easy entertainment. In fact, I don't know that it's entertainment at all. It's quite harrowing what he goes through.
Okay.
And to admit to this, it is very brave because what happened to this guy is really fucked up. So, yes, not one for a, romantic night in with your partner.
Okay. Well, what we're doing as a romantic night in is my husband really wants to watch Shogun, the new one, not the one with Richard Chamberlain, who's he, most of you will say.
Including me.
He was a heartthrob in the 70s and 80s.
Okay.
And he was the lead actor in Shogun back in the 80s, which is a Japanese period drama miniseries. And it's on Disney. And it's very good, what I've seen of it. It's mostly in Japanese. And I have my headphones in most of the time editing podcasts, or I'm tippy-tapping and writing stories for upcoming episodes. So I haven't really been immersed, but it looks like fun. But when that's done, maybe I'll ask him about Ripley. We'll do that. Maybe not Baby Reindeer. I'll do that on my own.
I think do it on your own because it's a hard watch.
Okay.
there's a couple of question marks over why the fuck did you do that?
Right.
We leave that for another moment and we discuss once you've watched.
Okay, let's do that. You had a beer with one of our researchers.
Oh my God. I met up with researcher and all-round
Handsome
hot
older
guy,
man.
Al Taggart.
Yes.
None other than Al Taggart. He's not a unicorn. He is a real person. And we had a great old time. And it was wonderful to see him and catch up over some beers. What a guy. What a hot guy.
I'm glad you had fun. I missed seeing him when I was recently in Australia, so I'm very sad about that, but at least you got to have the fun with Al. Did he give you any recommendations or any good stories to look at? He's good on the real life stories, isn't he? He's given us some good mafia and policemen being shot and killed and mysteries and things like that.
Look, Al has also given us some quite gruesome ideas. Murders
that
we haven't been able
up.
to do because they're just that little bit one step too far.
He actually told me something that I don't know if anyone can ever say out loud. I'm sorry to have to dangle that carrot over everybody's head, but he gave me some information regarding a murder that no one knows about because it's somebody from his family history that knows a secret. So we can't tell.
Oh, my God.
And I'm going to have to leave it there. Sorry, guys.
Geordie, do you know what? This is exactly what we mean when we always say with these unsolved cases, someone knows something. Someone always does,
someone
but they're
always knows
they're
something.
taking it to the grave. And I've got chill bumps. I don't even know what to think about what you just said. However, I'm sure you're wondering, did Al pull me up on any pronunciations? Well, no. We had a great conversation and he didn't have to pull me up on, what have we said?
Gamut.
Gamut. Oh, show us your gamut. Al, I know you're listening. It was an absolute pleasure. What a joy.
Oh, I'm a bit jealous, I have to say. I missed out on some Al time. Never mind. We'll make it up at some point on one side of the world or another.
And Al, thank you for just being you.
Speaking of murder, though, Michelle, last week we talked about something that I had seen on TikTok, because we talked all about TikTok, didn't we? And I said, whilst getting lost down a TikTok hole, I saw these films that were taken. I said it was in Bolton or somewhere like that. It was actually Bradford. It was about a woman setting fire to her husband, but actually it was police finding a man's body in the back garden. So it was quite harrowing and awful, and we laughed about it. But that we weren't laughing at or with, just laughing about something completely different that we found entertaining. I don't know what that was. Emergency services went in and extinguished a small fire, and the video that I saw showed several emergency services outside the house, and then they broke through a gate. They bundled out 2 suspects. Neighbours said the family who lived in the house, there was a man in his 80s, his wife and son aged around 20, that they were highly reclusive and hadn't been seen outside for years, with some believing the elderly man who lived there had died during the COVID pandemic. And locals are said to have heard a man screams and seen smoke coming from the garden before finding a badly mangled
Oh, my
body.
God.
These are all things that I found on Mail Online. And then apparently a 52-year-old woman and a man aged 26 have been arrested on suspicion of murder, and both are in custody. And a neighbour said, I couldn't believe it. It was like something out of a horror film. I can see into her garden. I never see her in the winter. I only ever see her in the summer. That's normal in England.
Yeah,
Come on,
that's
guys.
not
That's
weird.
how it goes with your neighbours. I never see her in the winter, only in the summer. We don't go out into our gardens any other time. There's no point. It's freezing. Sometimes I see her in the garden wearing a full hazmat suit. Now, that's not normal.
No, but if she's...
That's not.
Look, a lot of people were traumatised after COVID.
No, she's got a hazmat suit on, Michelle. Not just a mask, gloves,
But
mask,
maybe she's
hazmat.
traumatised. I don't know what to make of this.
He said it's very strange, and I might agree
Well, I'm
with that.
sure, actually. No, I can see that that's quite odd. All right. Well, thank you for that little update.
My pleasure.
As you know, I am in Australia, and
Yes.
I did hear, very briefly, the bird that sounded like it's murdering a baby. And I thought of you. I did think of you. Fun times.
Those birds are quite noisy, aren't they? Quack. I can't remember what that one did. Was it the one that went whip? The whip bird.
No.
You got the vibes.
You got the
I get the vibes.
So we've been talking about Australian birds.
A lot of Australian stuff. I have a feeling I have an Australian story coming up today.
Well, guess what? Me too.
Well, we do like to theme them, Michelle, don't we?
We do.
So what about this as an Australian theme this week? What about Crocodile Dundee?
Hogs.
It's about as Australian as you can get. Hogs, Paul Hogan as Crocodile Dundee.
Yes.
Mick Dundee. That's not a knife. This is a knife. All of that.
I know. And then he married the beautiful Linda Kozlowski.
But he had to divorce Pauline first, his actual
Oh,
wife
my
that he'd
God.
had for years.
I forgot about her.
Don't forget Pauline.
Oh, I did.
Yes, everyone's forgotten about Pauline.
Oh, I did
Poor
forget
thing.
about Pauline. But look, Croc Dundee, it is so wrapped up in Australian culture. That guy is an icon. And what, it has to be 30 plus years.
Oh, yeah. Put Australia on the map, they reckon.
And people still reference, oh, Croc Dundee.
What? Is that your impersonation? That's not a knife. This is a knife.
Croc Dundee. I mean, look, in the restaurant, we get a lot of international guests, and people often ask me, where are you from?
And then they pick up their butter knife and say, that's not a knife. This joke could never get old.
You know, as soon as I say I'm Australian or I say, I'll give you one guess, it's where kangaroos are from, they go, oh, Crocodile Dundee. Like the amount of times. And it's quite shocking to me because
Really?
it's such an old film, and yet it's become, I guess, culturally iconic.
Significant indeed. Well, did you know, Michelle, because I didn't until I was in the airport reading a magazine, that Crocodile Dundee is based on a true story?
No.
Well, not so much a true story, but actually a real person. It's inspired by the life of a man called Rod Ansell. And the film, like I said before, was made to appeal to a mainstream American audience to get a few more Yanks to put another shrimp on the barbie. But it proved to be a worldwide phenomenon, as you've discovered when you're in the restaurant getting butter knives stuck in your face. I found this story from Guardian journalists Rory Carroll and Helen O'Neill, and it's from the 5th of August 1999. So it goes back a way. Get your hats on. What was Top of the Pops in 1999, Michelle? Can you tell me? Google it.
All right, I'll Google while we're talking.
Okay, so I'll tell you a little bit. While Michelle's doing the investor Googling on that, I'll tell you about Rod Ansell. So Rod Ansell was the guy they based Crocodile Dundee on. He was blonde, blue-eyed and laid back, just like Paul Hogan, who's the comedian, writer, actor who wrote and devised Crocodile Dundee. And he also had a comedy show before that. I can't remember what it was called. Paul Hogan Show or something like that. So Hogs, we know him as in Australia. So he played his version of Crocodile Dundee in the famous films. That's Not a Knife, etc. Rod, the real-life Croc Dundee, he was a cattle grazier and a buffalo hunter from the Northern Territory, and he found fame in 1977 when a crocodile overturned his motorboat on a remote river west of Darwin. He was only 21 years old, Michelle, and at the time he told his girlfriend he was going on a fishing trip, and he may be some time, i.e., a couple of months.
Oh, my God.
That's the sort of thing he would do. I'm going fishing. See you in a few months.
Just going out for a pack of smokes. Never came home.
I'll see you next decade. Well, anyway, that's what he would do. He was a barefoot, nonchalant, blonde-haired wild man from Northern Territory, which is a part of Australia that I don't know much about at all. It does sound quite wild and woolly, I suppose. So off he goes on his fishing trip. His boat was flipped either by a crocodile or just something big, and he thought it might be a whale at the time. And he also had 2 8-week-old bull terrier puppies with him. They all 3 managed to clamber onto the dinghy that was attached to the motorboat to save themselves.
Yeah.
All he had was 1 oar, a rifle, a knife, some canned food and bedding. And he was stranded almost 120 miles, which is 200 kilometres from the nearest human settlement. And one of his dogs had a broken leg.
Oh,
Tough times.
God.
So Rod Ansell's dinghy.
Yeah.
How do you say it? Dinghy. Dinghy.
A dinghy.
Dinghy.
Dinghy. I don't know.
Dinghy drifted out to sea and eventually washed up on a small island at the mouth of the Fitzmaurice River, which is north of the Victoria River. And for the next 2 days, he travelled up the Fitzmaurice River on tidal flows. all the while becoming severely dehydrated. But eventually he found fresh water above the saltwater tidal range. Now, I don't know what this all means. I just read it and wrote it down because I wouldn't have remembered. And I don't know much about finding fresh water above saltwater tidal ranges. I guess you kind of flow from one saltwater thing into a river or a canal or something. Not a canal. We're in Australia now, aren't we?
Yeah.
Into a creek or something.
Yeah.
And it becomes less and less salty and becomes more fresh, I suppose. So he found some fresh water, whatever, he did it. And then he must have come to ground, and he survived by hunting wild cattle and buffalo by day. And sometimes he'd have to drink cattle blood as a substitute for water.
Oh, my God. Grim. But you've got to do what you've got to do to stay alive.
Got to do what you've got to do.
I mean,
exactly.
I've got a big glass of
cattle blood.
Blood, i.e. a Shiraz.
He also followed bees to their hive to get honey and all sorts of Bear Grylls-ian types of things. During the night, Ansell slept in a tree fork out of reach of crocodiles. You have to worry about these things.
You do.
And also, he shared a tree with a big brown snake.
Fucking hell. No, thank you. No.
At some point, he shot a 5-metre or 16-foot crocodile, and he kept the head as a souvenir. So I don't know how much more evidence you need of this guy being the real Crocodile Dundee, but I think we're getting there, right?
Yeah.
2 months later, he was discovered. 2 months. That's right. 2 months he was doing all this.
Fucking hell.
And no one raised the alarm because his girlfriend just thought, oh, that's what he does. He goes out fishing.
Out fishing. He's gone for a pack of smokes and fishing. Yeah, he'll be back when he's ready.
He was discovered by wandering Indigenous people and returned to his life, keeping his ordeal under wraps until the papers heard about it. And then he was dubbed the modern-day Robinson Crusoe and made front-page news. Shortly after that, he met his wife Joanne, and they had 2 sons. They spent most of their early years as a family living just under a canvas sheet, no electricity or running water. They'd cook by campfire and communicated by radio. Then, in 1979, a filmmaker got Rod to relive his adventures in a documentary called To Fight the Wild. And that was followed by a book, I think written by Rod, called To Fight the Wild, the same name. At this point, you might be thinking, who were the witnesses to this ordeal?
Yeah.
And how much of his story was true? Because even as I was telling you all this, and I know the story, I was thinking, do we believe him?
It seems a little bit far-fetched that for 2 months, even in the, late 70s, you could just get lost.
Yes, it was the late 70s, and he went from saying it was a crocodile to it could have been a whale and all sorts of miscommunications about what actually happened.
Yeah, maybe a bit fanciful. I'm not sure.
And I did search.
Okay, and?
Like in one publication it would say one thing, and another it would say something else. Yeah. It was all along the same lines. He's amazing. He's barefoot. He's laid back, and he loves the land, and he's good at working the land and making it work for him.
Okay.
But some believed it was a publicity stunt, and others wondered why Ansell didn't follow the river downstream to the nearest town, which by all accounts could have been done.
Yeah, exactly. Because I was thinking...
Were you thinking that? See, I wouldn't have known to think that.
Well, I mean, you always follow a river because at some point you will come across civilization because people need water. So you follow the river. And also, if his bushcraft skills were so amazing, he would have known that.
Good point, Michelle.
I'm getting fishy vibes here.
I will remember that next time I'm in a canoe on the Thames and I get lost. But when asked in interviews what he was doing in the remote Australian wilderness by himself, he claimed, like I said before, he was on that bloody fishing trip. But he told friends privately that he was actually poaching crocodiles. So maybe that's why the story didn't add up. In 1981, our favourite interviewer from the UK, Michael Parkinson, or Parky, as he's known, interviewed a barefoot Rod Ansell in Sydney. And he was staying in a very fancy hotel, the Siebel Townhouse. I don't know if it's still there.
I knew you were going to say that.
Did you? Because is it the only hotel?
I stayed there. So I was about 8 years old.
Was that when you met Elton John?
No, I met Cliff Richard and Shirley Bassey. Not even joking. It was a Mother's Day competition. I didn't win. I got second prize.
You've told us this before, us all.
But it was the Siebel Townhouse.
Yes,
oh my God. It's
fancy.
Where all the international guests stayed.
Hello, little girl.
Oh, don't be creepy. But yes, maybe.
How exciting. Well, he was at the Siebel townhouse as well, and it could have been the same time. You'd have known him because he wasn't wearing any shoes, and he was sleeping in his sleeping bag rather than on the bed. But this is what caught Paul Hogan's attention after he saw the Parkinson interview, and together with longtime collaborators Ken Shady and John Cornell, who is also on the Hogs show as Strop.
Oh, he's Strop.
The guy with the little hat.
Beach lifesaver.
Lifesaver's hat. Yeah.
Hang on, didn't he have a little tongue out? Strop?
Yeah. Little tongue out, yeah. So the three of them created the character of Mick Crocodile Dundee. Oh, that went on, as you know, to be a huge box office hit. $328 million apparently it took.
Oh my
and won an
gosh.
Academy Award nomination for Best Original Screenplay.
It was a phenomena.
It was a phenomena. This left Rod Ansell angry that Hogs and his crew had cashed in on his life story. So he tried to start a tourism business on a piece of land and wanted to call it the home of the real-life Crocodile Dundee. But Hogan's office didn't like this and denied permission, threatening legal action if he did move forward with his plans. So then he tried unsuccessfully to take them to court. Meanwhile, he went on to be named the Territorian of the Year from Northern Territory in 1987 for helping to put the top end on the world map. He had a little bit of accolade for it.
Yeah, but you can't take an accolade to the bank. He wanted some cash out of this because he's got no shoes and he's got a sleeping bag, you know.
Well, he doesn't want shoes.
No.
He stayed in the Siebel townhouse, but he wanted to sleep on the floor in his bag.
Okay. Is there anyone who doesn't want money?
Well, obviously he needed some at this point, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But the journalist Chips McAnulty, what a name. I'm going to enjoy saying that again later. Chips McAnulty met Ansell in the 1980s and found him to be articulate and likeable, if somewhat intense. Then Rod Ansell went on to launch his own cattle station called Melaleuca, which was 140 kilometres or 87 miles east of Darwin near Kakadu National Park. This wasn't a smooth ride for Ansell because he was forced to sell his ranch in the early 1990s when a TB eradication program meant that he lost 3,000 head of cattle. He felt that the Northern Territory government were to blame for not providing him with compensation. So, without his cattle station and no money coming out of it, he turned to growing marijuana instead.
Okay, shit.
So now it's 1992. And by this point, he's convicted of stealing cattle and fined for assaulting another rancher. And by this point, also, his marriage had fallen apart. Things then went even further downhill for Ansell. With his new girlfriend and no ranch, he got himself an amphetamine addiction.
Oh, yay.
That's always attractive in an older man, isn't it?
Oh, you get ice face. Not nice.
In 1999, it's said that Ansell got into an argument with two men. And later, one Sunday night, 44-year-old Ansell left his home and he walked 250 miles. I don't know how long that would take. And then shot up a house in a small village called Livingston.
Oh, fucking hell. This guy's on the edge.
He went on a rampage. He's not just on the edge, Michelle. He's gone beyond the edge.
It's over the edge.
So the men inside the house that he shot up didn't even call the police. But later, when they did call the police, they said that Ansell was paranoid and angry and that he was raving about how Freemasons had kidnapped his children. But this was not where it ends, Michelle. He wasn't finished. Police were then called again at 10:30 p.m. when he shot up another house.
Oh.
This was in a low socioeconomic area. And the house was a dilapidated building on a 20-acre block of land. And it was known to be a cannabis farm. And inside the second house was a 47-year-old man, a 36-year-old woman, and a 10-year-old girl when he opened fire with a lever-action rifle.
Oh, no.
A neighbour heard it.
Do you think this is all ice-induced?
Well, I don't know.
Meth.
I don't know.
Crazed.
No, there's no meth. It was amphetamines.
Isn't it methamphetamine?
No ice face. No, it's different.
Okay.
Speed. Amphetamines is speed.
Okay.
A neighbour went to the people's aid by driving his truck into Ansell's path and line of fire, and bullets smashed this neighbour's windscreen and the neighbour's eye was badly damaged. But Ansell then jumped into the truck and tried to drive away, but the man came at him with a baseball bat, hitting him on the head. So then Ansell shot off one of his fingers. So this is mayhem.
It is mayhem.
This is absolute mayhem. Whatever's going on here, it's wild. Then Ansell ran off into the bush on foot, sparking an intense manhunt, and police put roadblocks up everywhere to try and hem him in. and search for him. But Michelle, he wasn't running. He was stalking his hunters.
Oh, no.
Armed with 2 guns, Ansell came out of hiding in the bush and began firing at the police, and he shot and killed 37-year-old policeman Glenn Hewitson. Police immediately returned fire, and they then killed Rod Ansell in the process.
Of course, he shot a cop. It's all over.
Later, the Assistant Commissioner at the time, John Dalby, said the police at the roadblock never saw him coming. So what caused Rod Ansell to snap and go on this mad rampage? Rumours at the time were insinuating that he was involved in the Hells Angels, probably because of this aforementioned drug problem. And his girlfriend at the time, called Sherry Hewson, was wanted by police, and she went missing after he was killed for a few days. When they did find her, though, they were very keen to hear her testimony. Why did he shoot at the policeman? He could have just disappeared back into the bush. Chips McAnulty, who had known him for 15 years, said, "I never saw him wear shoes, and you need to have very tough feet to be able to do that. He was born in the bush and lived his entire life there." And then he went on to say, "He was tough as nails, an extraordinary person at that level, but it ended up in tears." Thanks, Chips. You could say that. You could say it ended up in tears. Very much so.
You could also say it ended up in a murderous shooting rampage where people lost their lives.
Sadly, we don't have any more information to hand. I mean, I could have tried to search back Sherry Hewson's testimony, but I couldn't find it. So I think it's just ended up in the annals of tragedy and disaster over the years, like an extraordinary life that ended, like Chip said, in tears. But there's more interesting facts to do with Rod Ansell. There's another Hollywood connection.
In what way?
Who are the other famous Australians that you can think of currently?
What, the Hemsworths?
That's it. I thought you were going to say Eric Banana, but it's Chris Hemsworth. So there's about 18 of these young men. Let's narrow them down to about 3 famous ones. There's 3 famous ones. If you didn't know that, I didn't know that. I just knew of one, possibly
Liam,
2.
Chris. Who's
and the other one?
Yeah. Okay.
The other one is actually the one that I have some information from, Luke, who was in Westworld.
That's right.
Yes. So he says that Rod Ansell is their aunt's husband. So somehow, I don't know who he was married to. I don't know who the aunt was. It could have been the first one, Laura. I think it could have been her. Who knows? But Rod Ansell was Chris and Luke and the other one's uncle by marriage. And eldest brother Luke says that his auntie was married to him. And he also says, it's funny because Chris Hemsworth, his brother, bought Paul Hogan's house in Malibu. So he ended up living in the same house that he lived in. And then he said, I sat next to Paul Hogan at an Australians in Film Gala and got to have a good, nice chat with him. He's still as lovely and as sharp and as funny as he ever was. Funny they don't want to talk about Rod Ansell, though.
No, but it's one of those things, like, where is the legal line between inspired by and just ripping off someone's story? And do you have to give credit and financial compensation to somebody if you steal their life and turn it into a story?
Well, even that Hemsworth brother goes on to say that it was just one of many people that Crocodile Dundee was based on.
Right.
I don't think that's what Rod Ansell thinks.
No, of course not. Rod's like, you stole my life, you bastards, and I got nothing for it, and pay up.
Well, he didn't get that. And instead, he just spiraled into drugs and mayhem.
Maybe bikies. Who knows?
Maybe as well, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Sad, isn't it?
It's sad, but really fascinating because, you know, like I said, Croc Dundee was and remains an Aussie legend, an icon. It made Paul Hogan's career, and people to this day still have an association between Crocodile Dundee and Australia. No matter how cheesy it is, we should actually revisit those movies and see if they hold up. I'm sure they're super sexist.
I don't know if I fancy doing that. I remember going to the cinema to see it.
Okay.
With my brother.
That's not a knife.
This is a knife. Baywit, it's a baywit. No shirt and thong. What a ding dong. Baywit, it's a baywit. Big gut hanging out. Kitty, 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 cat. Oh, I don't even know, yes. What the fuck?
Now, Geordie, you did ask me to look up what the top singles were in 1999?
Yes. Did you get anywhere?
Yeah, I did. And I will say, just to preface this, we did this a few weeks back where we both were like, Ricky Martin, Cup of Life? What? What is that song?
What's that?
So
Yeah. It's not still number one in 1999.
no, it's not. But I did have listener and Patreon interviewee, Zoe Folbig, message in saying, how could you not know Ricky Martin, Cup of Life?
Did she sing it?
She sang it to me and immediately I knew it. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Cup of Life, ole, 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 Cup of Life. Okay, look at you. You still got a blank and I've just totally embarrassed myself with a Ricky Martin bad rendition.
Well, I thought you were going to say, inside, upside down, living the leader loca.
God, they all sound the same, don't they? They do. Well, look, I'm going to do a little bit of a top 5 because I don't know some of these. This is the top 5 singles
In Australia.
in Australia on average for the year 1999. Number 5, Pretty Fly for a White Guy. The Offspring.
Everybody says I'm pretty fly for a white guy.
That's it. Then we have Last
I hate that
Kiss,
song.
Pearl Jam. Which one's that?
Don't know that one.
Me either.
So I missed a lot of this stuff. I wasn't living in Australia at the time. I know that they're global, but I think the Aussies just really went hard on the rock.
Yeah, they did. Then we've got Blue, Eiffel 65. Do you know that?
I'm blue, ba-da-dum-dee-dum, ba-da-ba-da-dum-dee-dum, da-da-boop-dum, da-da-dee.
Is
Is
that
it that one? I have to do water aerobics to that every week. I'm blue and da-da-dee-dum, ba-da-da-dum-dee-dum, ba-da. Do you know what I'm doing?
Absolutely, I do.
recognise
It's
the song?
really good. Like, people will get that. Number 2, you're going to know this one. Oh, baby, baby.
How was I supposed to know?
That's exactly
Yes, of course,
it.
Britney Spears.
Yep, baby, one more time, Britney. And number 1 is Mambo number 5, Lou Bega.
Oh, no, don't even go there. A little bit of Monica
That's
in my
it,
bed.
that's
I
it.
hate that.
Yeah.
Hate it. So I hate 1999 and the singles. Thank you.
It wasn't great,
Moving
was
on.
it? It wasn't a great year.
No.
But I did know that you were doing Croc Dundee. So I decided to look at another Aussie legend who loved a croc. And I'm not talking about Crocs. I'm talking about
Crocs and socks.
Crocs and socks. I'm talking about actual
Which
Crocs.
is a look.
It is, but is it a good look?
I don't mind it.
Anything can be a look, Geordie. Do you like... I mean, your husband has been known to have a croc and a
That's
sock.
true.
No, we're talking about actual Crocs, a little bit like Croc Dundee. And this Aussie legend met a tragic end because of his love for Aussie wildlife. Yes, today, not a croc, but I am looking at what happened to Steve Irwin, the larger-than-life wild man of the Australian Nature Reserve.
Very excitable, wasn't he?
Oh, crikey! Crikey was his catchphrase.
Again, he was something that I only knew of from afar because he kind of came up in the media while I was living in the UK.
Actually, I was never a fan because I was living in the UK for at least half of the time that he was starting to, have an international presence. But yes, on September 4th, 2006, Steve Irwin died from a very vicious stingray attack. Now, I'm just going to go back a bit because maybe our younger listeners don't know who Steve Irwin is.
Well, I just want to stop for a moment and just say about stingrays. I saw tons of them when I was recently in Australia because I come from the far south coast and they're everywhere. They're just at the fish and chip shop in Batemans Bay. You can look over the edge and there they are. They are pretty harmless. They're not raging.
No, but you have got probably colder water stingrays.
Yeah.
Where he is far north Queensland.
Okay. Everything's out to get you there.
Well, kind of. And it's a different temperate climate up there. So maybe there's something about it. Maybe it's a different type of stingray. This was a bull ray.
Oh.
And also, without getting ahead of myself, there has been a lot of flack thrown at Steve Irwin saying, oh, well, stingrays are not an attacking kind of creature. They're generally pretty gentle.
Yeah.
He must have been doing something to provoke this stingray.
Maybe this story will put all those questions to bed.
Maybe, so keep listening. No, I'm joking. So, Steve Irwin, born February 22, 1967. His dad, Bob Irwin, was also a wildlife expert. I didn't know this.
Wow. Because it's generations now, because his kids are also experts.
Exactly. So it's 3 generations. And the dad was reptile and amphibians specialist. Because, you know, before I kind of knew that, I was thinking, how does somebody become a crocodile hunter? You know, how do you know that's what your calling is?
Yeah.
When I was sitting at primary school in a little farm school in the middle of nowhere, it wasn't like I thought, I'm going to be a crocodile hunter.
No.
So I think you have to be exposed to that at a young age, and he clearly was. So it does make sense that he was brought up in a family that was already doing this kind of work, and that his dad could kind of pass on his knowledge and skills and expertise to his son from an early age. Also, it turns out his mum was a wildlife rehabilitator, and she would nurse injured wildlife back to health and then release them back into the wild.
Oh.
So the whole family were into wildlife and reptiles. In 1970, when Steve was 3, his parents opened the Biwa Reptile Park.
Oh.
So Steve was right up in the whole reptile world from really very young.
So he would have been around them as a child.
Yeah.
So no stigma, no
Exactly.
fear.
And he was catching small crocs by age 9. He began volunteering for Queensland's East Coast Crocodile Management Program at the age of 13.
Incredible.
Yeah, and he really did very quickly become part of the team, and a valuable part, because from the age 13, he caught and rehomed over 100 problem crocodiles.
Oof.
Not joking. They put a 13-year-old
That's crazy.
in front of problem crocs.
Problem ones.
Geordie, I don't even know if you've ever been in the presence of a croc.
No, just in the aquarium behind glass.
Well, you were talking before about Crocodile Dundee and
Rod Ansell.
Rod Ansell. I was going to call him Ray Ansell, Rod Ansell. I was in Darwin visiting my friend Monique, who was living up there, and we did this road trip around Kakadu National Park in Litchfield, and we went to this watering hole where Monique was like, hey, let's go for a swim. It's freshwater. There are these signs all over the place. Imagine just a red circle with a crocodile face on it.
No crocodiles allowed.
Crocodiles in the watering hole. Crocodile in the watering hole.
Oh, okay.
And it's full, Geordie. It's full of people swimming in the watering hole.
Hang on.
And I'm like, what the hell? I'm not going in there.
No.
And she's like, oh, it's fine. They're freshies.
Freshies? What, they have a smaller mouth?
Freshwater crocs. What? They have a breath mint. They are freshwater crocodiles. They live on the bottom of the watering hole.
Ew, because that means they could just bite your bum or bite your feet.
Or bite your leg off.
Yeah.
But everyone's like, oh, they're freshies. Just swim on top and don't go too deep and kick one in the face. Otherwise, you'll lose a leg.
God, no thanks. You wouldn't catch me in
Geordie, it was full of people. Full. And guess what? I got talked into doing it. So I'm there splashing around. It was not the most relaxing swim of my life. But on that same trip, we saw an Aggie saltwater croc while I was on a riverboat.
Aggie? What, you mean aggressive?
Aggressive. Oh, my God. This crocodile had a death wish for everyone else. And we were on this riverboat. It was fucking terrifying. It was massive. This crocodile was like 7 meters long. It was fat and it was really fast. It was like on its little stumpy legs just going for it.
Oh,
it was really
God.
scary.
No.
It was really scary. And they will rip you to pieces. Saltwater ones will tear you apart.
No, thank you.
And they've got all those extra like rows of teeth.
Yeah.
They will shred you
They're
in
like
seconds.
dinosaurs, aren't they?
They are. It was so scary. Back to Steve Irwin. If he's in charge of problem crocs at age 13, dude really does have a gift.
Sure.
You know, because no way would you get me near a problem croc or really any kind of croc. But he loved them. He loved crocs. He loved animals. And eventually he took over his parents' park and renamed it the Queensland Reptile and Fauna Park, which is where he met his wife, Terry.
Yes.
Terry Raines, an American tourist who was also obsessed with wildlife rehabilitation.
Sweet.
And in fact, yeah, it's really cute. They obviously found each other. And she ran her own rehabilitation centre for injured cougars in Oregon,
Oh.
where she was from. So they were kind of like birds of a feather.
Yeah.
Together, they became the king and queen of the outback. And eventually they got married. And instead of, going to Bali or wherever for a honeymoon, they instead spent the first few months of their married life capturing crocs and filming it.
Ooh. Why capturing?
Well, because he's a crocodile hunter.
Okay.
And then, he talks about crocs and then he releases them. And all of this footage became kind of the pilot for what became Steve's show, The Crocodile Hunter. And that show exploded. And people from all around the world loved it, couldn't get enough of it. People loved him. He was this Aussie wild man. And I do think that probably Croc Dundee paved the way for this. People loved his enthusiasm. The fact that he would also say Aussie stuff like, oh, crikey, if he came across a croc. Terry was always by his side and she sort of became as much of a personality as him. And then they created other TV shows like Croc Diaries, Croc Files, New Breed Vets. I know, like I said, people could not get enough of them. They loved him. And they built up a massive following. During that time, Steve and Terry had 2 kids, Bindi Sue Irwin, who was born in 1998 and was named after Steve's favourite croc,
Bindi,
who was called Bindi. I mean, I don't know that I'd like to be named after a croc. Hey-ho. And then in 2003, they had a son called Robert, named after Steve's dad. So Steve's life was going great. He had a beautiful family, career that was rocketing. He spent every day doing what he loved.
Yeah.
World couldn't get enough of his little cheeky charm, crikey.
The world at his feet.
The world was his oyster. And then on September 4, 2006, at Bat Reef near Port Douglas in far north Queensland, Steve was filming with Justin Lyons, who was a cameraman who'd been with him on various expeditions for his shows over the past 10 years. They were filming at Bat Reef, trying to get footage for a show he was working on called Ocean's Deadliest. Ominous. But there are some different accounts of this. The consensus sort of seems to be that the weather wasn't playing ball that day and filming had been cancelled due to bad weather. Steve was bored. He was just hanging around his hotel. So he and his cameraman, Justin Lyons, and his director, John Stainton, kind of jumped in a boat and went up to Bat Reef anyway. They spotted a deadly tiger shark, but they tried to chase him and follow him, but they lost the trail. Okay. So they were just like, oh, shit, we don't want to waste our time. What else can we film? And that's when he saw this big 8-foot stingray.
Oh, my God, 8 foot.
8 foot. I don't know what the ones in Bateman's Bay near the chip shop are like.
They're big, but they're not that big. Was it like floating around in the ocean, like on the floor, though? Because that seems to be where they hang out, like in shallow, in the sand.
Very interesting. I don't actually know the answer to that question. Sorry.
Did I ever tell you about the time that my brother trod on one? I think I have mentioned that on this podcast.
Remind me?
Well, my dad taught us to water ski in a little tinny boat, as he called it, in the beach where we lived, which was only a little tiny beach. And there was a sunny day, lots of people in the water, and we ran out of petrol. My dad said, we're going to have to swim for it. So all 3 of us had to jump out of the boat after he put the anchor in. I was 12, my brother was 9, and we swam. My brother was in front of me. And as we got closer and closer to the shore, we're swimming a long way, by the way, out to sea.
Yeah.
And we had to swim into the beach. And my mother definitely had a word to my dad about this afterwards. And when we started to get to the point where we could touch the bottom, it was very clear water. My brother put his foot on the back of a stingray.
Oh, God.
And I looked down and screamed, keep going, keep going. Oh, my God, I was freaking out because I thought, what's going to happen now? He put his foot square down on the back of this stingray. I just kind of kept myself up high. It was sitting in the sand on the floor.
And what happened? Did he get stung?
Nothing. He just kept going and I panicked and I kept swimming faster and faster. And Dad got in trouble from Mum.
Of course. What the hell are you doing making the kids get out of the boat and swim? Those were the days.
Where are the oars? We could have just oared it in.
I know. Why did that not happen? But this day, after they, saw this 8-foot stingray, I think Steve thought, yeah, this could be good for a different project he was working on.
So get some footage.
Yeah, because he was working on a new show for his daughter Bindi called Jungle Girl. And what he did is he got out of the boat and swam above, kind of right over the tail of this bull ray, which people do say in normal situations, bull rays, stingrays, whatever, they are usually harmless. They're docile. Most will either swim off or stay still until you swim off. But on this day, this stingray did not swim away. Instead, it apparently propped itself up
What?
on the front of its kind of webbed wings.
So it kind of like lifted its front body up.
Yes. And pushed its butt skywards where its tail is, and its barbed tail, and started stabbing wildly at Steve.
Wow.
And this is a quote from the cameraman, Justin Lyons. He said, "The water boiled with bubbles, thrashing and whatnot. The entire time I was locked on Steve. He was filming."
Oh, God, there's film.
Yep. He said, "I didn't know what was going on. I could see it was trying to stab Steve and he was pushing it away, but it was all over in about 10 to 15 seconds.
Stop it.
The stingray swam off, so I panned to film Steve swimming away."
He wasn't.
Except Steve wasn't swimming away, Geordie.
Oh, this is awful.
Instead, the stingray had stabbed his barbs straight into Steve's heart.
Oh, my God.
And this is another quote from the cameraman. He said, "I panned with the camera as the stingray swam away. I didn't even know it had caused any damage. It wasn't until I panned the camera back and Steve was standing in a huge pool of blood that I realised something had gone wrong."
Standing.
So maybe you're right. Maybe it was quite shallow.
But he was standing even though he had a barb to the heart.
Well, the barb's gone. So in later interviews, Justin said the barbs went through his chest like a hot knife through butter.
Oh, God.
And he also said that at the time of the attack, Steve said the stingray had punctured me lung, not realising the barb had actually pierced the skin and straight into his heart. Justin, the cameraman, also said, and this is a quote, "The stingray probably thought Steve's shadow was a tiger shark. And tiger sharks feed on stingrays. So that's why he thinks this stingray attacked him." And he said, "As we were motoring back, I'm screaming at one of the other crew in the boat to put their hand over the wound. And we're just saying things to him like, 'Think of your kids, Steve. Hang on. Just hang on.'"
Oh, God, that's heartbreaking.
And he says, "He just sort of calmly looked up at me and said, 'I'm dying.' And that was the last thing he said."
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's fucking heartbreaking. So that's what we know happened to Steve Irwin. But of course, there's more to this story because, as we know, cameraman Justin Lyons, he was filming the whole gruesome attack.
Yes.
And that footage,
Don't tell me.
supposedly, has never been seen by anyone except the camera crew and the authorities.
All right.
And the whereabouts of that footage, supposedly, remains a mystery to this day.
Supposedly?
Yeah, because apparently all the copies of that footage were destroyed immediately after authorities completed their investigation in 2007, except for one copy, which no one knows where that copy is, although Steve's widow, Terry, says she thinks it's most likely sitting in some police vault somewhere gathering dust.
Yeah.
Because, at the time, police needed to see whether or not Steve had done anything to provoke the attack.
Sure.
And actually, after viewing the footage, they ruled out that he had been intimidating or threatening that stingray. And according to Surf Lifesaving Queensland, Steve could have died from just a rookie move because they say it's absolutely a no-go ever to swim above a stingray.
Yeah.
Because your trunk is really vulnerable.
Yes.
And it's really easy for them to flick up their barbs in their tail and inflict a fatal sting on the trunk of the body.
Sting.
Which is exactly what happened. Marine authorities say stingrays only flick their barbs upwards in an involuntary reflex action if they feel threatened.
Oh.
And look, that could be the shadow theory,
Yes.
a tiger shark shadow, who knows? But a superintendent of police who viewed the footage concluded that there was no evidence that Steve had been intimidating or threatening the stingray and that he was in fact just observing it. And it was concluded that there were no suspicious circumstances around the death. But back to this footage, Steve apparently was really insistent that his team always keep the camera running. good or bad.
Really?
So it wasn't weird that Justin, the cameraman...
Because it does seem a bit...
Well, it's kind of like that famous footage of that child on fire in...
What?
Is it Cambodia or...
You mean the monk?
Is it the monk on fire?
Yes.
Okay, where the cameraman's filming and not helping, which, you know, sparked a debate. Like, what do? Do you film? Do you help? Because you think your mate is getting barbed to death and you're filming. But it's not weird because they were trained to film the attack rather than helping.
Right.
Obviously, that film really helped the police investigation. According to a guy called Tommy Donovan, who was Steve Irwin's biographer, he said, you know, Steve always said that getting footage was priority number one. And apparently, you know, he would always say if Steve needs help, he'll ask for it. Even if he was eaten by a croc or a shark, the main thing is he wants it to be filmed.
Oh, really? He wants it. So he actually said, if you see me in trouble, if you see me in the jaws of a crocodile or a shark...
Keep
Just
filming.
keep filming. What did he think? Did he think that through, I wonder? Because what did he think they were going to do with that footage? No one wants to see that, Steve.
I don't know, but he got his wish.
Yeah, he did.
To be fair, I think this attack was so fast. There was probably A, no time for him to even ask for help, and B, what can you do? By the time you've put your camera down and jumped into the water, you're then also a target. So it's very complicated. But I did read that the director, John Staten, who was also there at the time of the attack, said that he would never, ever make the video of Steve's death public because he said it was too distressing to ever be shown.
Oh, God. Thank God for that. Don't show it.
No. And he said to CNN in 2006 that the video will never see the light of day, ever, ever. And he said, I saw it and I don't want to see it again. I would never want that tape shown. But,
good.
Of course, if you go on YouTube, you can find footage of what they say is Steve Irwin's attack.
Really?
Yeah. And in 2018, Terry, Steve's widow, spoke to You magazine, which is an Australian magazine, I believe, and said, after Steve died, 100 million viewers watched a video of his death that was released on YouTube. God. That film was a complete fabrication exploiting people's sadness. I have never watched the real footage. Why would I? I know how my husband died, and I was relieved that the children weren't on the boat as they usually would be. It would have been horrendous if they'd witnessed it.
Yes.
So what's the truth here?
And who would do that?
I don't know.
Who would do that? Who would fake that up? If it was done back in 2018 or before that, 2007... then there's no AI. There's no deep fakes at that point. How do they make it? It's somebody suffering. But who wants to watch anybody suffering and dying?
People do, Geordie.
I feel like that's a taboo, actually, Michelle. I remember years ago, a friend of mine, a friend of the show, Mandy, told me when she came to visit me in London, she saw a front page of a newspaper and there was a dead body from a war situation. She said that would never happen in Australia. There's like a ban on showing. It's disrespectful. You don't show dead bodies.
Yeah, but look, the internet is full of snuff movies.
Oh my
sick
God.
Kind of porn snuff movies. Like, there's a market for everything. There's morbid curiosity, I guess. You know, we talked about that YouTuber who sent his girlfriend out into the snow for a dare and she froze to death. People still watch that video of her lifeless body.
Have they not taken it down?
Yeah, but these things always have a way of coming back. It's just fucked.
Yuck.
If you do rummage around the internet, real or fake, I don't know, but you will also come across some Steve Irwin conspiracy theories that he faked his own death.
Faked his own death? Why would he?
I don't know. But my favourite is from a blog by an Australian mystic who says she suspects that Steve Irwin faked his death and is living somewhere in Australia, maybe with his dad, Bob.
What?
This blog gives a little bit of a different version of events, namely that at the time of Steve's death, he was setting up to shoot ocean reef footage from his boat called Croc 1, which sounds like a bit of a croc to me, but we'll see about that. And she says Justin had been filming Steve milking sea snakes.
Oh, what?
What the fuck?
Sorry, that just sounds horrible.
How do you milk a fucking sea snake? That just sounds like a euphemism for...
Why are you milking it?
Oh, I'm just milking the sea snake.
What are you doing, Steve? Just milking a sea snake, you know. It's like laying a cable.
Laying a cable. Or even worse if he's like, yeah, I'm just milking the sea snake. Just going to crack one off, milking the sea snake.
Stop it! Oh my God, you're filthy.
So apparently they grabbed a raft, not a boat, a raft, and went looking for tiger sharks.
Just a raft. That'll do it.
I don't know. And she says she got her info from an interview Justin Lyons gave. And I will put a link to that.
Okay.
And also from an interview with John Stainton, where the two of them, their stories are not consistent. Weather conditions don't match up. Accounts of the stingray attack don't match up.
Are they talking about the same event,
Yes,
though?
but we're talking about the same event.
Right.
Cameraman Justin has one version of events, and the director, John Stainton, apparently has a different version of events, and they're not consistent. Like I said, weather conditions don't match up.
Weird.
Accounts of the stingray attack are different. John Stainton says things like he saw Steve pulling out one of the barbs that stabbed him in the chest. That's not even possible.
No.
Whereas Justin Lyons says that the bull ray barb that went through Steve's heart stabbed Steve hundreds of times within a few seconds, like, which I can believe is plausible, actually. And that Steve did not pull the barb out. There's some conflicting things here. Plus, she says she's a clairvoyant medium who works with energy and the metaphysical. And she says she remote viewed Steve Irwin's face on 2 different occasions and felt his emotional energy. And she says she heard him say her name. She says the first time she remote viewed Steve Irwin's face was on Bindi, his daughter's birthday, July 24, 2020, middle of COVID here, just saying,
Right.
middle of the pandemic. She says not only did she remote view him and could see the expression on his face, but she felt his emotional energy because she was seeing what was being shown to her through some negative energy attachments that she has to her body. I don't know what that means. Maybe Safika can help us with this. She says when she saw Steve's face, he was smiling and he was very happy, and he said her name, Jane, when she was remote viewing him on Bindi's birthday. But the second time she remote viewed Steve, she could tell from his face that he was pissed off with her and he had bad juju. And her conclusion is that because she could remote view him and feel his energy in the first place, not dead. Has to be alive, therefore faked his own death.
Oh, and now he can see her looking at him. I'm a bit confused about the remote viewing thing.
I think she's sort of saying you can only remote view people who are alive. So boom, he's alive. But Geordie, this guy was at the top of his game. He had a family and kids.
Yeah, no, he's not killed himself. He hasn't faked his own death. That's ridiculous. Reaching, Jane.
No, I think it's a bit ridiculous. Maybe Jane wants a bit of reflected glory. That's all I got for you on Steve Irwin.
Well, thank you, Michelle. That was incredible and quite shocking. Some aspects of that story. You think you know something. It's a bit like your Menendez a few weeks ago. You think you know a narrative, and then when you look a bit deeper or look a bit further, it turns out you don't.
Poor old Steve Irwin. R.I.P. is what I say. R.I.P. Steve.
Yeah, he seemed like a nice guy.
Crikey.
I found while you were talking. I'm just trying to bring some sea snakes forth.
Oh, do you want to milk them?
No, I'm not going to milk
Do you
them.
want to milk a sea snake,
Jesus.
Geordie? I feel a new jingle coming on about milking a sea
No,
snake.
I never want to say that word again. I don't want those words in my mouth. It's disgusting.
You're disgusting.
You're disgusting.
In your mouth. You didn't even need to say that.
Sorry, we went there. Well, it's just tumbled out of control. I think it's time for us to leave it.
It is, because I've still got half a glass of cattle blood. Red wine.
We are the wild women around here, aren't we? We're talking about these wild men, but actually we're the ones that are wild, talking about milking sea snakes and drinking cattle's blood. Aren't we wild?
Wild. But, Geordie, you're right. It does bring us to that time of the podcast where there's only 3 things left to say.
Wherever you are.
Whatever you do,
Just keep eavesdropping.
Eavesdroppin'.
Eavesdropping. 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 Eavesdropping.